Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
And welcome to the Gateway Podcast, broadcasting from the edge of the Mojave where the strange slips through the cracks. We are live on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM, New Orleans. I'm your host this evening, C.L. Thomas. How are you guys doing out there? I have a great guest joining me tonight. Her name is Brooke Ashley. She is a dedicated evidential medium who has spent the last 5 years training with some of the most respected names in the paranormal field. Her passion and commitment to spirit work have led her to develop a clear, heart-centered, do you hear that? Heart-centered approach to mediumship. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Focusing on delivering accurate, listen to what I'm saying, guys, accurate healing and validating, that's so important, validating messages from loved ones on the other side. But before we get into our guest, we have been listening to the wonderful host, Sean Kelly, with his guest, Mark Eddy, as they discussed Ohio's antiquarians. Do you guys know what that is? I'm not even sure what that is. It sounds like reptilian stuff, though. I kind of listened in on a little bit of that show. You know, they always do a great job, though, with what they do. It's currently 107 here in the Mojave and a bit smoky from the nearby wildfires in Arizona. Yes, all the surrounding areas outside of Las Vegas have been on fire, and guys, it's gross. I'm leaving tomorrow morning, thank goodness, to get a break from it, but it's pretty smoky around town. So if you're in the area, close your windows and cozy up and get ready. Tonight's topic is evidential mediumship, and this past week I was just in Lilydale. It's a historical village in western New York that it became a starting point for spiritualism. We're going to talk just a little bit about that tonight. It was a neat experience, I have to say. I stayed in a hotel that was in operation for over a century, probably about 130 years. The room I stayed in and the bed I was in, pretty much, I think that was 130 years old too. It was like one of those tiny little beds, and I'm not a very big person, and I had a hard time fitting in this bed, just to give you an idea. And it's a normal size adult bed. So yeah, a lot of weird things happened to me that night as well. One of the things that stands out to me about that hotel, though, was in the lobby of this place, there is, when you walk in, the hotel is called Maplewood. When you walk in, the hotel desk is in front of you, but then on the immediate right, there's this big room, and they used to have seances in there. No joke. So I'm talking like a century years worth of, am I saying that right? 100 years worth of seances happening in this room. And on the walls, there are these paintings that are original paintings that were precipitated by the spirit world during the Victorian age and well into the turn of the century. So you have like Lincoln, for instance. There's a really cool painting of Lincoln. And what happens is these mediums back in their day, they had a seance and they set up a canvas, and this painting of Lincoln appeared. And the reason being is because somebody in that group had a connection with Lincoln's wife, who was into spiritualism. She was actually, so they say, she was actually a member of the spiritualist church. So kind of interesting. But some of the paintings on the wall they're incredible. But anyhow, I digress. Seances led to precipitated paintings, which led to spirit art and then to evidential mediumship. And that brings us to my guest tonight. Brooke Ashley joins me to discuss her journey into evidential mediumship. Brooke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Let me get your banner up here. There it goes. So to start us off, can you talk a little bit about yourself and how you ended up down this road?
Sure. I guess if you want to go way back quickly, I was kind of born a little bit offbeat. Always knew that it was a little bit different. So I think kind of stumbling through life, being super empathic and realizing that I kind of went against the grain when it came to everybody I really came into contact with, except for a select few friends that, seemed to kind of understand that part of me. But I've always had paranormal experiences. I always knew I was empathic, always knew that there was something else going on there. And I would say about 5 years ago, I had like a complete fracture of realities. I had a massive spiritual awakening. And luckily, at the time, I had run into my first mentor and saw that she was doing beginners classes for mediumship. So I thought, well, I don't really know how this works. And I didn't really know that you could learn to be a medium. So I thought, well, we'll put this to bed once and for all. Maybe I'm just empathic, a little bit psychic. So I'll take the class and just put it to bed that I'm not a medium. And it turns out, I guess I am a medium. So I've been training for the last 5 years. I always say developing medium because I feel like you're always developing. You never quit developing.
It's a lifelong learning situation.
Yeah, it is. You never quit learning, I think. And I think that's true with pretty much everything that you dive into in life. But yeah, with mediumship, you are always learning.
So, can you start with the basics for listeners who might be new to this? What exactly is, I'm going to let you answer this question. What is evidential mediumship? It's something I'm asked all the time.
Yeah.
And how does it actually work from your perspective?
Right. So when we talk about evidential mediumship, to me, that is connecting with your loved ones on the other side who've crossed over through evidence and information you should be able to understand and validate about your loved ones. So when mediums are working, we use these, what we call these sixth senses. People call it a sixth sense, but there's actually multiple. So we have these things called clair senses, and clair is the French word for clear. So we have clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and clairsentience, which is clear feeling. And those are four of the main clairs, is what we call them. And those are senses we use to receive information that allows us to connect with someone who's crossed over on the other side. So I think that when we talk about evidential mediumship, the most important thing is evidence. I like to call them golden nuggets, but evidence is the most important thing, I think, inside of the feeling is good. The feeling is great, but without those nuggets of actual, true and honest evidence, it can leave people feeling wanting. Yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, you can't just walk into a building and say you feel energy.
Yeah. And I mean, that might be true for many, many people, a lot of empathic people out there. And maybe you walk into a room and you do feel the energy. But when we're talking about mediumship, it's going to have to go a lot deeper than that. Because if we're talking about it, anybody could walk into the room and say, oh, I feel, and then go into very vague statements. So then, therefore, there's no proof as to whether or not someone is using mediumistic abilities, as opposed to someone saying they're using mediumistic abilities and in reality using vague, overlying statements that don't really have any value or hold any value of truth. Yeah.
Right. Have you ever gone and gotten a reading by someone who is a medium or claims to be a medium, and the only thing they show you, they always say, "Oh, it's your spirit guide," and
I
nothing else?
personally, I haven't had anybody say that to me, but I will be honest, I never had gotten a mediumship reading before I dove into the world of learning mediumship. So I've had like a million readings from other people who are in the classes, who are practicing. And I hosted a practice circle for 2 years. So people always practicing the mediumship around me, maybe not mediumship that I've taught them or mediumship that's been taught to them by my mentors, but holding space for that. I do see that happen to other people though. I do
Yeah.
see, as I'm scrolling through, doom scrolling, on my TikTok or wherever else, just a plethora of, well, I can't validate that, or, well, the person can't take it. So I'm just going to say, oh, it's a spirit guide, because I call that, I call it evidential mediumship, because I'm using evidence that proves through the person, they can validate that that is true or untrue. And you hold yourself accountable through evidential mediumship.
Right.
Other types of mediumship, so Akashic records, readings, past lives, things of that nature. Do I believe in them? Yes. But have I found many people that I trust? No, maybe one or two that I honestly, truly trust. But I have seen a lot of it where I don't want to be held accountable. So I am going to put out these statements that can't be validated. Spirit guides can't be validated. Past lives, they can't be validated. You know what I mean?
Yes, I love that. You said you spent 5 years training with some of the most respected names in mediumship. Can you walk us through what the intensive training process looks like and how it kind of shaped your approach and your practice?
Right. So I started with Cindy Keza, who was trained by the Spiritualist Church, which I find very interesting, because I do feel like the way that I've seen a lot of spiritualist mediums work and the way that Cindy works is very different. I feel like there's a lot of flowiness in the way that Cindy works, and a lot more room to go deeper, just in certain areas. So she was my first mentor. And then I mentored off of her suggestion with Paul Jacobs, who is with the Arthur Findlay College in the UK.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
did a year with him. I also did a bunch of one-off classes with other mediums that I found that I could trust, I really enjoyed and liked. But I've also done quite a bit of work with, or training with, the Acorn Academy, which would be Kaz Dukes and her husband Dolly, and I adored them. But there's been a lot of incredible mentors. Another one, Natalie Lucia, was really, really great. She studied underneath Mavis Patilla, who was also, I mean, the head of like the Arthur Findlay College, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Mavis Patilla. So the people that I've trained with, even if they're not spiritualists themselves, did train under the spiritualist movement, the spiritualism way of working.
Yes. And when they train, because I've been trained by the Spiritualist Church as well,
Mhm.
they they're really good at training. They really take you in depth, and they do this thing with practice groups where I don't know if they did that with you, where they section you off in pairs to do practice circles. And you have to get so many hits in your reading for the other person. Some of it's pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be. It can be constricting to some people, because there's two sides of the coin. And I think it's very interesting, because one side of the coin, they're saying you have to let spirit speak, don't get in your own way. And then the other side of the coin, they're saying, I want you to get this, this, and this. So it can confuse a lot of people, especially if you're analytical minded, like very analytical minded. It can get confusing. I'm not, luckily, I can read between the lines, and a lot of gray area for me. So luckily that was never an issue for me. But depending on which tutor you have and how they run things, it can be very, it can be intimidating sometimes, especially working with Paul Jacobs. That is, you have to have a backbone to work with him. You have to be okay with being called out. You have to be okay with, him being really, really forward. And some people don't do well with that. Some people do well with that. But for people like Paul, I find the reason I really enjoyed him is because he very much hits home the importance of basics, that baseline that you absolutely need to grow on in order to become a good medium. If you don't have those basics, it's like back to the drawing board, we're starting over. So it's nice to have some of that structure. But I do like the fact that I don't work just within the spiritualist church. I'm not really in the spiritual. I'm not a spiritualist. I'm not in the spiritualist church. I've trained under some people who were spiritualists or trained under spiritualists. But I find because there are different ways that you're allowed to read versus not allowed to read inside of the
Yes,
church and
that's
not.
absolutely true. But I'm very involved with this spiritualism side, but I am not a member of the church, and I'm really not subscribed to a lot of the dogma. But what I do is I take what makes sense to me and what I can use from people that I trained with under the spiritualist church. One of the guys that I trained under, he's a minister. He was a minister in Lilydale for a while, and now he opened his own church, I think in New Jersey somewhere, but he's really still highly respected. But it's one of those things. I just take what makes sense and what I can use, and then I kind of leave the rest, if that makes sense.
I totally agree with that. You kind of have to. You have to take what resonates for you, because when you're trying to force something, it's not going to work, and it's going to tangle you up in knots, and it's going to make you want to give up. So you got to take what works and leave the rest, and really be okay with that. Yeah.
Right. The one thing I really do like about them is the idea of working with spirit and working for spirit in order to serve. That's something I don't really see a lot in the paranormal community.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting because in the paranormal community, and I don't know a ton of mediums in the paranormal community, I've only really, but the ones that I have seen, I've only really seen a few that I feel are doing it for the right reasons. And then, I mean, some of it, what I see is kind of that whole notion that you also see like on TikTok, if you scroll long enough, is that notion of, well, I decided I wanted to be like a medium today, and it's just not mediumship. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or they're not putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak, which I think is important. Yeah.
That's some of the differences between the paranormal, what you see on TV, and I'm going to stop saying paranormal TV shows. I'm just going to say what you see on TV and authentic mediumship. Huge differences. What are some of the misconceptions that you encounter, and how do you separate fact from fiction?
Yeah. Some of the misconceptions that from TV in general, from mediums, is that they get everything right all the time.
Yeah.
That bothers me, because you're giving the general public a complete misunderstanding of what mediumship is and how it works. So when someone comes to you and they're like, well, I want to know about this. Tell me about this. What about this? And it's a question and answer. They don't understand that it doesn't work like that, because the shows are making it look like it does. And then it creates a false sense of expectations on the part of the person you're doing the reading for. And all that does is disappoint. And that's the opposite of what mediumship is supposed to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sometimes you see on TV where the person, how should I say this? It's okay to be right only 70% of the time, with this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
You described your approach as heart-centered. What does that mean when you practice, when you're connecting with spirit, and how did you develop this particular style?
So heart-centered for me means like opening up your heart chakra and realizing and always remembering that this is somebody's person. They're a loved one. They're everything. So I always try to remember, what if my son was gone tomorrow? How would that make me feel? And then come with a level of compassion and understanding. This is a human being that was taken from this earth away from everyone who loves them? And how do I approach this in a way that is filled with compassion for the person that is sitting in front of me and for the spirit that I am speaking for? So it's always trying to keep that at the forefront, because that is the most important thing. Television shows aside, getting seen, getting recognized, it doesn't matter, because the only person you should be worried about is the client that's sitting in your chair, who came to you to try to fill a hole in their heart, or try to have some type of resolution that allows them to put one foot in front of the other again the next day that they wake up, with a little less strain and a little less wondering, is my loved one with me? Do they see me? And allowing that ability to connect them back to their loved one in a way where they can move forward from that day on. They can move forward and breathe up just a little bit easier. And I think that that's the most important thing.
That's so beautiful. It's all about healing, and it's about hope.
Yeah.
Hope there might be something on the other side for the other person, especially the person grieving. What do you think about, I saw this in the news recently, where there's some mediums out there on TikTok who they're saying that they're connecting with Ozzy Osbourne.
The thing that bothers me is it's clout chasing. It's complete and utter clout chasing. What's the point? Their family didn't ask you to do that. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing that I'm talking about right there. There's a real family who's missing him. There's a real daughter, a real son, a real mother, real grandchildren who are missing him. And you're taking that grief and using it as your own circus for attention. And that drives me crazy. We have to remind ourselves that these people lost the person they are the closest to, and they don't need to sit here and think of your opinion or that you're they didn't ask you to do that. And I think that consent is such a huge thing. You shouldn't be connecting to anybody that actively attempting to connect and bring through messages if you were not asked to do so. It's a boundary issue, I think. Yeah.
When you go into haunted spaces, whether do you do walkthroughs and things for paranormal groups?
Yes, I have a paranormal group of my own as well. And so, I'm so sorry I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Well, how does that work for you?
So for me, I love to travel. Me and my fiance, we are Earthly Imprint Paranormal, and we really just started it because we both have had so many experiences growing up of our own that we couldn't explain, and it's always been a part of our life. And when we got together, we fell in love, and adventure was the only thing that we were really interested in. It's like, you know what? Let's have an adventure. Let's just do our thing. So we travel the country really just doing what we love to do, getting into locations and doing paranormal investigations and things of that nature. So it's been an honestly unbelievable adventure that I'm very lucky to feel like I'm able to be a part of. But for me as a medium, it's a little interesting because most people like to know the history beforehand. I don't want to know anything until I go to the location, because I do like to, it's different. Evidential mediumship with a person standing in front of you who wants to connect to a loved one, to me, feels completely different when I'm connecting than when I'm going paranormally and I'm walking into a location. I receive the information totally different. And it's hard to describe that difference. But so when I am working paranormally, I just don't want to know anything. So if someone's taking me into the location or I'm meeting up with someone who knows about the location, I just tell them, please don't tell me anything. You can tell me the stories afterwards, or as I'm bringing through things in order for you to validate what I am saying, because I believe that evidence should be immersed in all of the mediumship. It should be evidence-based. So whether I'm working with somebody who wants me to connect to their loved one or I'm in a location, evidence is very imperative. So I like to, who is here? What is, what am I being told? What was the person like that's coming to me and expressing something? What is happening to people physically in this space? What is the haunting about? So trying to bring through that stuff that can be validated, I think is really interesting, but it is a different energy when I connect to the location.
How's this? Well, I know how this is different, but how is this different with just going in there with equipment and gathering evidence?
Right. I think that it's an added bonus. So I think equipment is fantastic. You always want to be able to kind of validate what you're feeling, anyways. So being able to capture things scientifically on equipment is huge, especially when you're trying to gather things for, maybe the audience or people who would, I'd have to say naysayers are going to always find a way to like explain it away, anyways. But the equipment is great. But I think when you have a medium there, if you are getting stuff, but you just can't understand who might be there, who it could possibly be, why, what is the story, and it's not becoming clear through just means of investigating in that way with the equipment, I feel like a medium coming in who is evidence-based is a really good bonus because it can answer some of the questions that may still be lingering that are unanswered through pieces of equipment.
Well, Brooke, we're going to take a quick break. And after that break, I will call you right back up.
Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or just love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock the secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
And we're back. Welcome back. The latest issue of Eerie Expeditions magazine will hit the shelves next Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. Tonight we are talking with Brooke Ashley, an evidential medium, and we're going to discuss for the second half of the show kind of gallery work and what that looks like. Ashley, welcome back to the show. Brooke.
Hi, thank you. Welcome back to you as well. I love that Eerie Expeditions magazine looks amazing, and I cannot wait to get my hands on one of those.
Thank you. It's a lot of work, and I tell you what, it's supposed to be 6 issues a year, but currently I'm only running the second one for the year, and it's because we've been doing a complete template revamp, and there's a lot of work to it. Once we get this down, though, it'll be 6 issues a year moving forward.
That's awesome.
But back to you. During a gallery reading, can you walk your listeners kind of through what's actually happening? Like, how do you receive the information, and how do you know that it's genuine spirit communication versus your own thoughts?
Right. So when I'm doing a gallery reading, that's usually, a lot of people are unfamiliar with what that is. So I'll just kind of preface by saying, when you're doing a gallery reading, essentially I'm the medium on stage and there are audience members, people in the audience. And so I'm bringing through spirit from the other side, somebody's loved one, and then I'm throwing it out to the audience. Like, I have a gentleman here, maybe he had a heart attack. He makes me feel like he would have been about 54. He has 3 kids, and somebody says, I feel like that would be me. And then I work with them. So gallery readings for me, as information's coming through, I feel like the quickest and easiest way, it's a really simple answer for how do you know that it's not your own thoughts? It's validation. And that's the quickest, easiest, most simple answer I could give, because I get that question a lot from my students, is how do you know that it's not your own thoughts? It's just validation from your sitter, because it's going to feel like that. It's going to feel like you're making it up. It's going to feel like it's your own thoughts at first, until you get used to that frequency shift. and knowing what that's like, if that makes sense.
It does. And, when I was in training and doing those practice circles, that was one of the hardest things for me, was learning how to trust myself. But sitting in, I guess that's why development in mediumship and taking classes with people who are really good at mediumship, who are good teachers, is so important, because the way you're trained, sitting in those classes, I got to learn one-on-one how to trust myself and to know the differences and what the frequencies feel like. And it just really hammered all that home for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that that's why I'm always a big advocate for people going to as many different mentors as they can and taking as many different types of classes from different teachers that they can, because I feel like not only can you bring something away from each person that you learn from, because every medium is different, not only can you take something away from each one, but I feel like it allows you to know where you end up feeling the most comfortable, or it allows you to work with as many people as possible, because you never know what you might be missing if you just stick with one thing. So I always am a big advocate of mentoring with as many different styles and many different teachers as you can.
Now, you teach classes yourself, don't you?
I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah. So I offer one-on-ones, because I'm a big advocate of the fact I know that when I first started, I could not find a mentor for one-on-ones for the first, I'd say, 2 years. It was all group classes and group courses, which I'm a big advocate for. I really like them. And the reason being is you create this camaraderie with other people and create friendships and create this sense of like community. For a lot of people who walk into this, they're kind of, no one in their life really understands it. It's a whole new ball game. So they're kind of coming into it singular and alone. So creating a sense of community is really important. So I like group courses for that. But I offer the one-on-ones because I had a hard time finding a one-on-one mentor. And sometimes you just need that mentor in front of you that's only focused on you, only focused on the way you work, what you need, how you can push forward. So I offer one-on-one 4-week courses for people who feel like they need that like undivided attention from a mentor who's literally only focused on them and creating exercises around what they feel like they need. Because it took me a long time to find that myself. So
if somebody's listening out there and they want to sign up for your class, how do they do that?
So you can either message me through my mediumship page, which is Mediumship with Brooke Ashley. That's my Facebook page. You can also go to my website. That's going to be where my group courses are. I usually don't advertise my one-on-ones there because I would have to plug it into the calendar and I never know like what dates people want for the 4-week course. So you would have to message me for that. So you can find me on mediumbrookeashley.com. You could find me on Mediumship with Brooke Ashley on Facebook. And you can always message me there for the one-on-ones. For group courses, those will always be on my website.
What kind of evidence do spirits typically provide to validate their identity with you?
For loved ones on the other side, what do they bring to me?
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say I really formed the whole. So Janet No Havoc wrote a book called Where Two Worlds Meet. And if people don't know who Janet No Havoc is, she was the head of the Journey Within. And she had an incredible book called Where Two Worlds Meet. It's not in print right now, but her sister is trying to get it back in print. And it talks about name, rank, and serial number. So I really honed in with the name, rank, and serial number. What that means is like 3 pieces of evidence you want right off the bat every single time. So spirit knows what you're expecting of them. And so for me, I chose male or female, how they passed away, around how old they were. Those things are really good in gallery style mediumship, which is what I love to do, because if you can pin down how somebody passed away, that's usually going to narrow down who you're with very quickly. So I don't have 12, 15 hands going up because the information is more vague. It's very, very direct. So it'll bring it down to just maybe 1 or 2 people, and then I can work from there. So usually I like to know male, female, how they passed away, how old they were when they passed away. And then I kind of move in from there. So I like to ask spirit, like, talk to me about How many kids did you have? Did you have kids? What was your personality like? What were your interests? Give me a memory of you at a certain time in your life that people just loved, or is a very special memory between you and the person that I am speaking with, your loved one. I ask for things like a photograph. Show me a photograph that they have hanging in their room. They'll explain, what they're wearing, what they look like, what they're doing in the picture. So I call them golden nuggets. But when I first started, I made a point that I wanted the whole reading to be golden nuggets. And the reason I did that, because even if I had a difficult or complicated reading, I would still get at least 1 or 2 golden nuggets. So I kind of trained that way from the beginning, like nugget,
You brought something interesting up. Whenever these people do galleries readings, I just went to one actually in Lilydale, and it never fails that at least 10 people will raise their hand and claim the message that's coming through. How do you work through that process of narrowing it down for who that message really should be for?
Right. So I continue to move into the evidence, and I try to, and that's the thing about the golden nuggets. The deeper you can go, the more evidential you can go. And it's about unfolding the story, like unfolding what was the dynamic between people in the family, all of these things that are very deep. So that if you're going to have to narrow it down. And a lot of people are pretty graceful that their hand will go down if they don't understand something, if you're really digging deep, because and they know that you can only make so many squares fit, round holes, so many square pegs fit round holes. But the thing is, my first mentor, Cindy, I watched her trust herself so much that even if she was getting it all right, I would see sometimes her going, you know what? This doesn't feel right. I don't think I'm with you. Just hold on a second. And then she would go back to audience and say, do you understand? She could feel it in her gut. So watching her trust her gut instincts when she would work, even if it felt like it could fit, but there was something off, is to go back to the drawing board and say, hold on a second. I feel like I might not be with you. And then I go back to the beginning. Does anybody understand, like this gentleman here who would have passed away from a car accident, and just go over it again? And then it's amazing, because I can't tell you how many times people who it is for will hold back and they won't. And then halfway through, then their hand goes up and everything fits, and you could feel it in your gut that it's for them. So it's training, it's trusting your clairsentience, it's trusting where spirit is pushing you. And if something doesn't feel right, you have to trust that.
You mentioned earlier that in your readings, these messages bring healing and validations and sometimes closure in a person's life. How do you see authentic spirit communication helping people process things like grief and loss?
Yeah, it's big. It's huge. I think that so many people just have, when they lose someone so close to them, that loss is so apparent every single day that they wake up and roll out of bed. And I think that being able to bring that notion back, that third party in the middle of it that says, here are the things that I'm seeing that you've done since they are telling me that you've done since they've passed away. Here are the things they're telling me about the relationship. Just that third party being able to bring it, who shouldn't know these things, who should not know what they just did last week, or should not know all of the, intimate details of their relationship with the person who's on the other side. And I think that third party in the middle really, even though they want to believe, even though they want to trust that their loved one is still with them, it's that third party in the middle sometimes that really allows that validation to take them to a place where they don't have to question it anymore.
So the mediumship has really become a trend in recent years. You see more and more people coming out and saying that they're mediums. As someone who travels the country doing this type of work, what draws so many people out seeking mediumship and seeking out these gifts? What are they really hoping to find and understand, you think?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a major shift, and I feel like people are coming out of the woodworks in this space of it's an interesting time. And I feel like there's something going on in some fracture of time where you see it's almost like an army, like building up of spiritual people who are needed, I think, in the moment. And it's something I can't quite put my finger on, but I find it to be quite fascinating. And I think it's really interesting to watch so many people say, I don't know what it is, but I want to explore that, and being open to it. And thank God we have so many people out there, or mediums, who do have experience in different areas. There's trance mediumship, evidential mediumship, there's Akashic read, there's all sorts of things where it might not be evidential mediumship for someone. It might be something else in the spiritual field, but they're drawn to the whole thing, because how will they know unless they open up themselves to all different possibilities? And I think that there's just a huge shift right now that is bringing people to these awakenings that are kind of opening up a whole new reality and a way of thinking for a lot of people.
It's kind of opening up a whole different period of life, I feel like, too. Like it's going deeper into what is life all about.
Right.
Maybe we're here, maybe there is something more to this and why we're here.
Yeah. And I agree with that completely. I think that, and it's so funny because coming from parents who, I'm adopted. So I was 4 when I was adopted, but my parents were great my whole life, but they're very 3D people. My dad doesn't even believe in an afterlife. He's like, you're wormwood. And, and that's his own trauma and his own stuff, I think, in the way that he was brought up, because he is going to be turning 80 this year. So he's a boomer, right? And they just didn't believe in that stuff. They don't. And it did put a wedge in between me and his. I don't speak to him anymore because of he's chosen not to speak to me anymore. And so I think that this wave of consciousness that's coming through is such a breath of fresh air from what reality was like even 60, 70, 80 years ago, where, spiritualism was cooling off. And it was vilified so much when it was originally around in the 1800s, that when it did start to cool off, I think there was such a negative connotation on it that really stuck with a lot of people from that era. And so, I get two sides of the coin, but I don't really allow myself to be bothered by that. And I think that the people who are coming out of their shells right now also are finding ways to not be bothered by the opinions of people who aren't quite there yet.
Joe Foss asks, where does he find your Facebook page?
Yes. So my Facebook page is Mediumship with Brooke Ashley. And there's a hyphen in between Brooke and Ashley, and Brooke has an E on the end of it.
Joe, if you check my Facebook page, I've also tagged her in today's ad for the show. So you can find her there as well. You mentioned Janet, and I just have to chuckle because have you read her books?
I've only read Where Two Worlds Meet, but I know she has more.
It's probably in that one too. When she goes into contacting spirit or working with spirit, connecting with spirit, I should say, she always says, and I must say that little. I just laugh every time I think about that.
Oh, that's so cute.
There's a picture of her in the assembly hall at Lilydale. There's a painting they hung up in honor of her.
Yeah, that's amazing. They should too, because she was, from what I hear, absolutely phenomenal and very selfless, and really dedicated her life to the enhancement of true and honest mediumship. And I find her fascinating because her life she could have gone down a really different path.
Yeah,
it could have been very different life for her. And I think that it's beautiful, like what she was able to create from where she came from. Yeah. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Her life seemed like it was very difficult in the beginning.
Yeah.
She was adopted too, right? I can't remember.
I believe she did live with another family, a different family. Yeah. I remember her sister mentioning that. And
then she lived in a convent for a while. And
right. Yeah. I remember her sister talking about how she had met her or she had come to see her at a bar she was working at when she was like, a young adult. And she was like, Janet, you got to get out of here. You're drinking way too much. She was just drinking way too much. And so she did. And everything kind of changed when she joined that convent. And people have some wonderful things to say about her. But the integrity of mediumship was her most foremost important thing to her, I think.
Yeah, she's a special lady for sure. For listeners who might be skeptical about, but curious, what would you want them to know about genuine mediumship versus what they might expect from popular, how should I say it, media portrayals?
Right. That's an important question, I think, too, because there's so many people out there who, well, when it comes to skepticism, I say that it's good to have a healthy skepticism, because that is going to stop you from being so easily swayed into something that may not help you, in your journey forward. So healthy skepticism is good. But I will say TikTok is my biggest platform. I have almost 25,000 followers on TikTok. And it's just because I'm myself and I'm genuine, and but when you're scrolling on there, and because I am a medium, you do get the algorithm pumps a lot of mediums at you. And I would have to say, if you're gonna go to a place where someone is offering readings in a public space like TikTok, please watch the medium. Please watch them work before you pay them, and look for things like fishing for information, allowing the person to feed the medium a bunch of information, and then them deducing stuff from the information they were given. A true and honest medium does not want any information except for maybe right when they're going to read with you, if you want them to go direct the first name of the person that you would like to hear from. And they are going to bring the information to you. You should not need to tell them anything. So watch your mediums closely on TikTok, and you're looking for things that are not vague, things that are very evidential, before you commit to getting a reading from a medium, especially on TikTok.
Is there a difference between card readers and things like that, or can they be genuine too?
They can be. It depends on what kind of reading you're looking for. So if you're looking for evidential mediumship, if they use cards to bring forward the information, and it's deep evidential information and it can be validated, I think that is it's just a tool like a pendulum or cards. It's a tool. Some people like tools, some people don't. I will admit that I like my cards when I have a very reluctant or very shy, quiet personality. Sometimes if it feels like pulling teeth, I'll just say, just talk to me through a couple cards, and I'll pull them. But it's my own interpretation of what they mean. Like somebody who reads tarot could look at the cards I pulled and then listen to what I said from them about the person on the other side, and they would be like, how did you get that? So, it just it depends. It's as long as the person can truly validate the information, they understand it, and it's evidential. It's just a tool, I think, in people's tool belt.
And Joe Fox says, I have issues with card readers and tarot also. I don't know if I have an issue with them. For the most part, I don't, because I have some tarot decks and things, and they've actually led me to do really good readings. Mm-hmm. So again, like you said, I think it's just another tool. It's kind of like I use spirit art. That's a tool for me. Right. I never really understood how tea leaf reading works, mm-hmm. but I'm sure there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Just like the cards are a tool, like the tea leaves can be runes, pendulums, so many different things. It's just about, sometimes I think the reader likes to have validation through what they have created with spirit through those pieces in front of them. So it's like a validating piece. So when I do psychic readings, I always use cards. They are psychic readings, but the cards are going to be like, yeah, what you were feeling was correct. It's almost like a pat on the back, like, yep. So
It's just another form of validation, I think.
Exactly. It's validating what you're already feeling. And especially if you have a broader understanding of what the cards could mean, because one tarot card could have 20 meanings. It's just, what does it mean? What are you being pulled to feel? And when you look at that card in that moment, it could be different. Like 5 times in a row that you pull that card could be different every single time, what it means in that moment.
So now, are you ready for the big question of the night?
Sure.
I always throw the big question out. Looking at the bigger picture, I love looking at the bigger picture. How do you hope authentic evidential mediumship can change people's understanding of death, consciousness, and what comes after?
My hope is that true and honest evidential mediumship can become so mainstream and so validating for people that no one ever has to question whether or not their loved ones are still with them, whether or not there's something after this life. And I think that's it for me. When no one ever has to question what happens after this life, when no one ever has to question if they're going to be okay or if they're going to be with their loved ones. Is there any separation on the other side? No, there's not. You know what I mean? Like, so when everybody's able to have their own experiences and everybody is able to feel that sense of peace and connection with what comes after and not have fear around what happens to us, what happens to our loved ones, then that would be the ultimate goal.
You would think that people who embrace mediumship and know about it, that it would help our community become, because it makes you look at life a little different and you become a better person because of it.
Yeah.
I really can't describe how, but that's what happens.
I think it makes you a more patient and compassionate person. At least that's what I've noticed with me. I find myself less high-strung ever since I had a spiritual awakening and stepped into this world. I don't fear things anymore. I don't worry. It's just kind of crazy to think of like how I lived my life before, but I live my life worry-free. I kind of just sit in a space of like observation. And I think that's a gift. It's such a gift to be able to, be in that space and not have to, worry. There's always going to be ups and downs in life. There's always going to be that kind of stuff, but to genuinely know that no matter what, you're going to be okay. Like, I think that's the beauty of it.
And it makes you appreciate the smaller things in life too. Like a couple nights ago, I was on the lake and was watching the sun go down on this lake. It was just so gorgeous.
Yeah.
I got to appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot more beauty in the stillness of things, I think, because when you're in this space, you have to ground so much that it kind of forces you to soak in the beauty of the stillness. Mm-hmm.
Joe says, I live my life in fear and worry. It's actually a rough way to exist, especially at night.
Yeah, that can be very rough. I think when I was having my spiritual awakening, my mentor said something, and I don't know if you've ever had this, where someone says one phrase and something like immediately changes within you and you're never the same again. And my mentor said, you really and truly and honestly, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. And something just clicked in me. And I was like, you're right. You're right. None of us are getting off this planet alive, and eventually we'll be with everyone we love anyway. So what am I worried about?
Yeah. And you're going to take nothing.
Yep.
In the long run.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. I guess we'll end it there.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it.
Can you remind people, where can they find you?
Yes. So my website is mediumbrookeashley.com. I'm booked into December right now for private readings, but I should be checking my calendars and double checking to make sure if there's some extra openings I can put in there because it's pretty booked up. But mediumbrookeashley.com, that's where you can find classes, events that I'm going to be doing across the country, and book readings with me. And then you can find me on Facebook at Mediumship with Brooke Ashley. You can find me on TikTok, which I'm on almost every day, at Earthly Imprint Paranormal.
Yeah. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. It was a real pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time, CL. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So you've been listening to The Gateway, broadcast from the edge of the Mojave, where the strange slips through the cracks, live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. My guest tonight was Brooke Ashley. She is a dedicated evidential medium. You can book her for a reading, like she said, or you can take a class with her. Her website is mediumbrookeashley.com. Thank you all for listening, and until next time.